Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Escape Hatch to Wellness. And my name is Yvette, your host here for today's wellness and well-being conversation. Today's special guest is with Deb Logan, who is the Executive Director with the Southwest Florida project of Blue Zones. And Blue Zones is something that may be new to many of you, or it may be something that you're looking to amplify your understanding and how to build a beautiful community wherever you are in the world. So a nice warm welcome to Deb Logan. And thank you for joining me today for a very special episode of Escape Hatch.
Well, thank you, Yvette, and big kudos to you as well, because what you're doing to move well-being in the community and beyond is really important. It takes all of us working together to move well-being, and I love what you do. And everyone I know who attends something that you're one of your classes or anything else that you do just raves. So it's a pleasure to be with you.
Let's start talking about Blue Zones as an organization, and also what Blue Zones is for the community and why it's so important in building community to have Blue Zones as part of almost like the glue that binds everything together.
Sure. Blue Zones Project, for those who don't know, is a community-wide well-being initiative, and it's a we project. It's led by everyone who says yes to well-being, basically. So again, it would be people, places, and policy. So as we work within a community, we actually work on infrastructure more so than behavioral. When Blue Zones comes to a community, we recognize that there's a lot of people teaching nutrition, fitness, stress management. There's a lot of great organizations and individuals doing amazing work. So we don't want to step on any toes or repeat, resources. We want to come in and build the infrastructure so that the healthy choice becomes the easy choice. Our goal is to help people live longer, healthier, happier lives. And by working with where we all work, play, pray, educate, etc., we can build infrastructure that makes well-being more sustainable. And we'll go through some examples of that. But in the project, we engage individuals and we say, this is how you can boost your own well-being. Here's some tools, some resources we offer, and connect them to resources such as yours, the meditation and various things. And then we work with places. So that would be schools, work sites, homeowners associations, faith-based organizations, grocery stores, restaurants, and other organizations, meaning anything that doesn't fit into one of those categories. So nonprofits, wellness organizations, helping organizations, all can be in the other group. And then exactly. And then we work with policy as well. We work with the planners, community planners, and elected officials who really are trying to make sure our community is a healthy place for people to live, work, and play. And we can help support them. And we do that in numerous ways. But for example, we have national experts that we can bring in to look at food policy, tobacco policy, and built environment policy. So built environment is, where we all live and where we exercise, where we walk, bike ride, a sense of place is your built environment. Does it feel safe, etc. But we can bring in national experts that can help support the type of initiatives that our planners and elected officials want to do, but maybe the community will is not there yet. Maybe the community doesn't understand the value of a traffic circle over a four-way stop, for example. And that's part of where we come in, is to help to educate. So we work with people, places, and policy to build an infrastructure where healthy choices become an easier choice. And no choices are ever taken away. Nothing is mandated. It's not a government program. It's funded 100% by one sponsor. And in Southwest Florida, that sponsor is NCH Healthcare System. And they, early on, they said, we want to do something that helps fix the problem that we have in this country with healthcare, broken healthcare, meaning that it's gotten very expensive for individuals, for businesses, for states and the country. And there are several pieces of it that we could do better. And they really said, let's focus more on prevention. And that's really what Blue Zones Project is how do we prevent people from getting chronic diseases that will cost them quality and quantity of life? And how do we keep people, if they do have a chronic disease, how do they manage it so they don't go back into the hospital or back into a doctor's office repeatedly?
Does Blue Zones look at cities across the country and say, we want to go here, and then they approach the community? Or is there somebody in the community who comes to Blue Zones and says, we like your concept and we want to try and bring it to our town? How does that work?
Great question. Actually, since the demand has been high for Blue Zones Project to come to communities, so high that our company doesn't have to go out and ask communities if they want to get involved. It's quite the opposite. Communities say, wow, we're interested in that. We saw the results of what happened, because this is a metrics driven project. We measure a lot of metrics, make sure we're moving the needle. And so there's usually over 100 inquiries every year, if not more, of communities throughout the country that are interested. We are now in 57 communities throughout the United States. And what our company, ShareCare has the licensing rights to administer Blue Zones Project, Dan Buettner's original concept of Blue Zones Project. We have the licensing rights to offer the program anywhere and implement the program anywhere in the country. But what a community needs to do is show that they really have ownership in the project to make it successful. And there is money involved to sponsor the project. There are dedicated colleagues in our project. There's 9 dedicated colleagues, and there's dedicated resources, national experts that help the community, and marketing, so people understand what is Blue Zones Project. And we do a lot of surveying. We actually used to hire Gallup, but now we hire Boston University to actually survey all the zip codes in our community to make sure we are really moving the needle, which is something we can discuss as well. But basically, when a community is interested, they need to find a sponsor, somebody or multiple organizations that are interested in funding the project. So all those resources will be available for free, because Blue Zones Project wants to be able to make the resources available to everyone, not just to those who can afford it. And so they need that. And then they also need to show that they have leadership will within the community. So not just maybe that their healthcare entities are interested in moving well-being, but also education and United Way or nonprofits in the community that help with well-being. You want your mental health facility, lead facility engaged in the project. You want government representation. You want to look at diversity, NAACP. You want to look at your Hispanic populations in our area. You want to have media involved in the project. And so we have over 20 steering committee members in Southwest Florida of community leaders that said yes. If you bring Blue Zones Project to the area, we want to help make it happen. They're the influencers and they can help make it happen. So as other communities throughout the country say, we like this, we want to get engaged, we just ask that they look at who that group would be, make sure they have buy-in. And I don't mean financial, but just they'll say yes to it and help make it happen. And then they can find sponsorship funding for it. And our company actually works with them and helps them. We do an assessment to look at what the needs are and maybe where the funding opportunities are as well. But when we first found out about Blue Zones Project in Southwest Florida, NCH had done a lot of that homework already and decided to fund it on their own. It's a big ticket. It's really a huge investment in Southwest Florida because of the size of our area. We're all of Collier County, Bonita and Estero, so South Lee. That was defined for our project as, and it's a big enough area. As you said, we might be about 500,000 strong, South Lee and Collier County in the summertime, but we can double and sometimes even triple depending on how many visitors we have in during season. So it's a big project area. So NCH Healthcare Systems investment in this project for the community has been substantial.
And you mentioned Dan Buettner's book. Do you want to talk about for a minute about how Blue Zones came to be and the person behind the movement that originated this whole growth episode of community building.
Yeah, it's really a great story, actually. Dan Buettner, when he got out of college, he was like many young people before COVID. He had the wanderlust and he wanted to travel, take a gap, a break. And and he also was a cyclist, a long distance cycler. So he decided he wanted to travel on bike, bicycle, I should say, every continent in the US. And he won a Guinness Book record. He's won 3. But while he was doing that, he found places in the world where people seemed to be living much longer and much healthier. So he was ultimately able to get some grant funding, and that ended up being National Geographic funding for several of his trips. But he was able to get funding to bring longevity experts together and go back and look at different places in the world and try to find where people truly were living longer, healthier, happier lives. Not just long lives, but actually healthy. So he found 5 places in the world that fit into these categories. And they're called blue zones because the researchers, as they were doing the study, circled on a map in blue magic marker these different zones, if you will, where people were living longer, better. And those places, for example, are Okinawa, Japan, Nicoya Peninsula, Costa Rica, Icaria, Greece, also Sardinia, Italy. And then there's one in the United States, and that's Loma Linda, California. And so they found these 5 places. And one of the times that they went back, they went back multiple times, but one of the reasons they went back was to do some in-depth interviewing to find out what were the secrets to living longer, better. And so they interviewed many people in their 80s, 90s, and 100 years old or older to see what their secrets were. And they came up with what are called the Power 9, or these 9 principles of well-being. So Dan, in all his exploration, he started first, he wrote an article for National Geographic that is still the 2nd best-selling edition of National Geographic ever. And it was the lessons of living longer, better. So you can imagine that would be a very, you're in your grocery store line and you see that particular issue is pretty popular. And people wanted to know more. So he was encouraged to do a pilot and to try this. Like people said, I'm not going to move to Sardinia just so I can live longer, better. I might want to, but my job won't allow me, or Nicoya Peninsula. So he was actually challenged to see if we could create blue zones in the US, other than Loma Linda. Loma Linda, I'll just step back for a minute. It's not some exotic place where, there's shepherds walking up and down mountains and getting their exercise that way, or where people have to plant their own food and grow their own food. Because in Loma Linda, it's right outside of LA, they've got fast food, they've got cell phones, they have the same stressors that we do here. And so what's so unique about it, as many of your viewers may know, is that they have a high population of Seventh-day Adventists. And the Seventh-day Adventists happen to follow the Power 9, many of the items on the Power 9 that we'll discuss in just a little bit. But so Loma Linda, California. But he found these places, and then he was challenged to create a new blue zones and replicate all of these lessons learned. And so there was people applied, different communities applied to be the first, and Albert Lee, Minnesota won that opportunity. And they made, Dan and his team at the time made significant changes in well-being in that community. And they collected all the metrics, and it was so compelling that Iowa said we want to be involved, and beach cities in California said they wanted to be next up as well. So those were the next 2 projects. And since that time, it has spread to 57 communities throughout the country, as far west as Hawaii, and then the western U.S., continental U.S. We've got projects in California, in Oregon, and in Washington State now. We also have projects in Oklahoma, in Pennsylvania, in North Carolina, I know I'm missing some of the areas, but they're all over the United States, which is really exciting. But Dan also along the way continues to do a lot of research.
Mhm.
So he's written some additional books. And then he wrote Blue Zone Solution, is a book where he really outlined how do you implement Blue Zones anywhere else and try to create this same sense of long-term well-being. He's written a cookbook, which is the most recent one. And he's written some books on stress, one called Thrive, and he did a revisit to Thrive as well. Understanding that our stress, our mental health and our stress is such an important part of our well-being. So he continues to just research a lot. He is sought after, one time I was talking to him on the phone and he's boarding a flight to Russia to talk to them about well-being. And yeah, right. So he's in demand all over the world. And what's really neat about Dan Buettner, in my opinion, first of all, he's from Minnesota. So he's got a down to earth, small town background, a foundation. And his brothers, two of his brothers work in the project with him. And they're the same type of guys, really sincere, down to earth. And you feel like you're talking to your brother. And anyway, but Dan, so he's very earnest in what he's trying to do. And he also, and he believes in measuring everything, let's just not come up with a concept and hope it works, but let's actually measure to make sure. And he is creative. He figured out how to take things that we've been actually sharing in public health and in wellness, in our wellness world. We've been telling people to eat better, exercise more, you should less stress. We've been saying that for years and decades. And what I appreciate that he's done is he packaged it into these principles, these Power 9 principles that are kind of what I call a sexy approach to public health. When you say one of the commonalities of people living longer better was that in many of the cases, they would have a glass of wine with friends at a meal. And so he packaged that at friends at 5 or wine at 5, because we tell people they don't have to drink the wine. It was probably more about the friends. But, people, maybe they're tired of being told about eating healthier, exercising more, but they see wine at 5 or friends at 5, and they're like, I can do that one. And so they get intrigued in the project. Or another one that I think is really smart was the principle called belong, which the research shows that if you attend a faith-based organization of any kind, and it can even be virtual. Right now, a lot of these services are virtual, but you're practicing a faith, you have camaraderie with like-minded people. You're turning your stress over, perhaps, right? To a higher power. But we can live 4 to 14 years longer by being engaged with a faith of some kind, some sort of spirituality. So the fact that he packaged all these and he continues to write about it brings a lot of attention to Blue Zones Project wherever they are, for sure.
Let me ask you, how long does it take to actually get recognized as a Blue Zones community? And what are the metrics that you have to meet in order to attain that status?
Yes, that's a great question as well. When Blue Zones Share Care comes into a community and does the assessment, we're looking at the size of the community, the challenges within the community. What are the successes already for well-being, but what are the challenges? Where are the gaps? What are the opportunities, in other words? And what's the diversity within the community? And as you look at many factors and you look at community health assessments, and we actually do an additional community health assessment to really dive deep into the social determinants of health. We want to look at, community will, but we also want to look at food insecurity, healthcare access, resource insecurity of any kind, housing, et cetera. We want to look at education, access to, and things like that. So we on the assessment stage measure a lot, just what is baseline, and then a community, it's shared with the community. Here's where the challenges are and the opportunities, and here's how Blue Zones Project can interface with that. Here's how we can help. And based on what that assessment looks like, the project and the size of the community, it's determined, would it be a 3-year project, a 5-year project, or more? And most projects are 3 to 5 years. The wisdom of NCH when they brought the project in 2015 was, let's make it a little longer than even recommended, because we want to make it sustainable. We don't want to just bring it and check all the boxes and move the metrics, but not make it, really embedded into the community. So we have an 8-year project. And so we will have to measure, just like every other Blue Zones project that wants to become certified as Blue Zones, we have to measure well-being. So every organization that we touch, every worksite, every school, every restaurant, etc., they're measuring data to see if they're really moving well-being. Have they added plant-based dishes to their menu? How well are those being received? How many are sold annually? If a school is implementing projects that move well-being, let's look at obesity rates. Let's look at absenteeism. Same thing with our work sites. We can look at a lot of data, and we actually have a tool that we share with them, an assessment tool that is very robust. It's called Real Age, that they can look at many different biometrics, I should say, and also just morale within their staff, the emotional health, social health of their staff, purpose of their staff, what people perceive as their purpose, and whether or not they're living on purpose. Anyway, there's a lot that our organizations measure, and then we're able to look and make sure we're moving well-being, and we help them accordingly. But we're also measuring data across the entire community. And we used to hire Gallup to administer the Wellbeing Index, WBI it's called. They administer that all over the country for years. For over a decade, they were doing that. And then ShareCare, our company, got engaged with Gallup. And we were administering that in tandem, not just to where Blue Zones communities are, but across the entire nation. And then our company said, we need to do a couple of things. We need to take the WBI Wellbeing Index, this major measurement that we're using across the country, but also in our Blue Zones communities. We need to bring that up to the 21st century. We need to make it digital for people who, no longer are going to fill out a survey by paper, and no longer, with cell phones, you don't pick up a phone number that you don't recognize. So it was hard for them to get the surveys done anymore. And so we digitized the Wellbeing Index. It's called Real Age. It is digitized now. We also have said we want to start looking deeper at well-being. The 5 elements of well-being that we always looked at with Gallup are social purpose, physical well-being, community well-being, and financial well-being. And that was really important. That gives you a snapshot of your community. In fact, in 2011, Collier County. So that's Naples, Immokalee, Marco Island, its entire community was 73rd in the nation as an MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area. And that was something that WBI measures every year. We came in 73rd for well-being. So we had pretty high well-being. That's pretty good before Blue Zones Project even came. Yeah. But then after Blue Zones Project, we were #1 for 4 consecutive years, showing how the community comes together under one mission to make it happen. Well, that well-being index has been enhanced because of ShareCare's involvement now, and now working with Boston University to take those 5 elements and add additional social determinants of health. When I was mentioning before, food insecurity, food access, healthcare access, there's hundreds and hundreds of social determinants of health. Well, we've added even more in, and it's now called the CWBI, Community Wellbeing. And so we measure that. We contract Boston University to do even more sampling on every zip code within our community. They already do MSAs, but we're actually hiring them to dial down to our community level, so that when we look at well-being in Southwest Florida, we don't just move the coastal well-being, we're moving well-being in Immokalee, we're moving well-being in Everglades City, in every pocket, Bonita, Estero, etc. of our community. So to get certified, sorry, it's a long story. To get certified, we do have to measure, and we need to show that the community, over 70% of the community says they know about Blue Zones Project. So you have to boost awareness within individuals. A certain percentage has to say it's impacted their life personally and they've made changes. And when it comes to organizations, we need to show that we've gotten this many restaurants engaged, this many schools, this many work sites, and not just for the totality of Southwest Florida, but in our 8 pockets within Southwest Florida. And they're broken into Estero and Bonita, Immokalee, Ave Maria, Marco, Naples, Golden Gate, East Naples. And I think I got the 8 in there, but there's 8 different communities that we need to move all those numbers in.
It can't just be one part of the county that pulls everything else. Everyone has to carry their own weight in the responsibility of being Blue Zones. That's wonderful, though.
Absolutely. And that includes policy too. We know, for example, the city of Naples has done some really great policy work. It's a walkable place, walkable, bikeable. So we wouldn't want to just we have to do a marquee project. I didn't mention that. Marquee projects are where you are actually able to show a change in well-being. Like when you add in Baker Park, when you add in bike lanes that are designated for safe biking, when you add in sidewalks, those are all things that actually show well-being is being moved. But we have to have a marquee project like that in every one of the communities that we touch in Blue Zones Project. And so if the city of Naples is doing some great work on it, or Bonita is doing some great work on it, we can't just count that and say we're certified Southwest Florida. We have to make sure we touch Immokalee and our other Golden Gate City and places like that as well.
I like the little roundabouts that have popped up in downtown Naples now. I like those little circular transitions. And as a biker, I really, really appreciate the bike zones and the sidewalks, the improvement in the sidewalks, because sometimes there are areas you can't actually bike on the main road. And they say, bike with traffic, but you shouldn't. I mean, it's just for your own safety and well-being. You should hop on the sidewalk and ride there. There's no bike path, but I really appreciate that. And Baker Park, the Greenway, I start my day many, many times a week riding out there from our house. I ride from our house out to Golden Gate and back is a good 12-mile clip for me, and it's wonderful.
That is so great. And that's such a, I'm so glad you brought that up, because really what Blue Zones Project is doing is reverse engineering some of the things that have happened in our generations, my generations, people who are older than me, any of us really. There's been so many changes that have made healthy living a little bit harder. I mean, we can still do it. And there's 5 to 10% of the population that's very dedicated to their well-being, gets up every morning or afternoon, takes a walk, bike ride, swim, whatever. But we know that if you can make walking, biking very inviting, and you can actually walk maybe to a grocery store or walk to a friend's house versus have to jump in a car, people will get more natural activity in their day. And remember when so many kids walked to school or walked to a bus stop? They had 3 miles of activity on average that was built into their day. And now, there's a perception that it's not as safe. And in some places it's truly not as safe, but nonetheless, there's not so many kids walking or biking to school anymore. And so we have to find other ways to do it. And that's what really Blue Zones Project does, works with the infrastructure in a school and around the school to make sure we can make the healthy choice easier again for people.
Easier and not super expensive, but something that's convenient. Like even when you go to a restaurant and there's something that's a Blue Zones recommended dish, it's not marked higher than the others. It's in alignment with how everything else is priced. It stands out, you can see it there and it's a healthy choice, but they don't make you pay for it, so to speak.
That's right. No, that's a great point. That's it's so important to us and to the philosophy of Blue Zones that we make sure it's for everyone. Yep. Across the board. And what you said is absolutely true.
There's 2 things. Number 1 was the real age, because you have a real age quiz on the website that you can actually take a shorter version of it to see what you should tweak in your life in order to live longer. Yep.
Right, that's right. It's a really neat tool. ShareCare came up with it. when they wanted to do a more robust data collection across the entire country, let alone in Blue Zones projects. And like I said, they made it digital. It's really the community. It's the questions that you used to get in the mail on the surveys, the WBI. It's a lot of those same questions packaged a little differently, and more questions added too, so we can dial deeper into well-being. But what's really neat, you take 10 to 15 minutes, you can log on your phone or on your computer, and you answer questions about your well-being. And what I love is it's true confessions with your computer or your phone. You're not having to tell the doctor, like when the doctor says, how many fruits and vegetables are you getting? Or how much alcohol do you consume? Well, we know the right answer. So, I try to do it this way, so sometimes those answers get fudged a little bit depending on how comfortable we feel. But with the computer, this assessment is for you. And so you can answer honestly about your well-being, and you can retake the assessment 3 months down the road, 6 months, say, I'm going to implement some best practices for well-being and see if I do better. And what's neat is you answer all these questions. If you have your lab work handy, it's great because you can put that data right in there as well. But if you take the assessment and you don't have your lab work, don't worry. You can go back and put it in, or if you never have lab work, you can skip. Nonetheless, you'll get at the end an assessment, it kind of tells you some things that you could do to live longer, because it'll give you your functional age. We all know chronologically how old we are, but it'll tell us based on how we're living our life and the choices that we make, the environment in which we live, how old we are, really. How old is our body? And sometimes we're a little younger than we thought. We're like, yay, I'm doing the right thing. And it motivates us to keep going. And sometimes we find out we're a little older than we thought, and that's a motivator too. And if you sign up for the app, you can opt out of the app. When you go online, it'll tell you can opt in for more information. And then you can, if you're on the phone, you can go to the App Store and get the app for Real Age, and if you sign up for that, it's really neat because it'll give you little nudges. It'll share some information with you. You weren't getting enough fruits and vegetables in your diet, so it will give you a little nudge, a little recommendation, and things that you can tune out if you don't want to hear it that day. It's not like somebody's telling you what to do. It's just a suggestion. And what I also like right now, it's very responsive to the pandemic and these unprecedented times, because it's got COVID care, up-to-date information about COVID and vaccines, not local where you get your vaccine, but general information. It's got information about financial tools for people who've been stressed that way. It's got information about anxiety and stress. And we know a recent poll that I read, over 50% of people have said that, the pandemic and the politics and the various things that happened in 2020 certainly played a role in their overall mental well-being. And so it's really neat. There's one on the app the other day, I added they have all these options you can add in. And there's one called Breathe. And I'm like, if I'm somewhere, in traffic, I can, tap this, and it just gives some nice little reminders. And as I said, then you can take it again in 6 months, a year, whatever, after you've implemented well-being, some well-being tools. And then for us as a community, this data that people are putting into their computer, they're not self-identifiers. So I don't know, for example, Yvette, how old you are functionally based on how you answered your quiz, and you don't know mine. But we will get aggregate data. It's all collected through Boston University. We end up getting aggregate data. And that data we share with our partners in public health and education, across the board, government. And when organizations are working to get grants, this is data that they need. It's also data that helps us in Blue Zones Project work with our partners to know, where are we still having issues? Where do we need more resources? And how can we all help? So it's really important to do it for yourself, but to do it for the community, to take that real age assessment.
And it's good, it's a good incentive too. We start out in January, we make our resolutions, and we're going to do this, this, and this. And sometimes if we don't have a coach, or we don't have somebody who's helping us, who's holding us accountable, that little test is a good little accountability tool to really remind you, a nice gentle nudge, not hey, get out there and do this, or why are you eating this? You really don't feel like you're being reprimanded. It's just like, oh, here's a gentle nudge in this direction. So you might want to consider this.
Yeah. And as the app evolves, actually, it's very exciting. We'll be able to put Blue Zones information in. So for example, if you're offering a class as one of our partners, if you're offering a class and you're offering that particular class for, free, a tester, let people come in and experience what you're doing. We can put it on the app and say, hey, by the way, this weekend, so-and-so, our partner so-and-so is doing this, or go to such and such restaurant where they're offering a Blue Zones special tonight. And we really feel that will help people, since so many people, younger even more so, are living on phones. It'll really help nudge well-being in a meaningful way in the community.
I know you mentioned breathe, and when I had gone through functional medicine training, I usually work from the 5 pillars of wellness, which are stress, relationships, fitness, nutrition, and sleep. So I was like, the last one, sleep, is the most important one, and especially we just lost the hour when we sprung forward. But I just recently added the 6th pillar because, which is breathe. I've added breath to my pillars because it's something that we do as out of habit. Our bodies are supposed to do it, but we do so badly. And I just read James Nestor's book, and I thought, you know what? It's just to help people learn how to breathe properly is a beautiful thing. So I've integrated breath work into the start of my meditation classes now. So I'm getting my breathers back online. So I'm reprogramming, I'm re-engineering them.
Oh, that's so great and so needed, especially right now, right? People, when we stress, our whole body stresses, and people breathe so shallow. So I'm very excited about that.
Oh, you're welcome. I was doing some of that with the Pulmonary Rehab Center at NCH before COVID, but obviously since then. But one of my students has some pulmonary issues, and so I've been prescribing her little breathing exercises to do that will help to strengthen her lungs. And so I'm expanding my own. I've got my Power 6 now. Maybe one day I'll have a Power 9 too, but
That's great.
a couple minutes and touch on the Power 9 just briefly before we wrap up.
Sure. Yeah. So I mentioned two of them. I mentioned the belong, and also, what's the other one I mentioned? I can't remember. But anyway, move naturally is one. Which one?
We did wine and
Friends at 5, wine at 5, right. But then we also have move naturally, just encouraging people to find ways to move without even thinking about it, not feeling like they have to join a gym. If they're there, great. But if they want to just, garden, if they want to, take their dog for a walk and meet neighbors while you're out there. So that helps us connect, or that fits into right tribe, finding people who will support your well-being. Even though the Power 9 doesn't have adopt a dog on it, it's one of the, in the personal checklist for well-being, it's one of the things that we have on there as a possibility. They're all choices, right? But either adopt a dog or walk someone else's dog, because if you want to meet people and, and connect, people know each other's dogs' names before they know each other's names, right? You start talking because of the pet. But anyway, so that would be right tribe. Find people who can help support your well-being, and we have solutions for all of these things, and that's probably a whole nother conversation someday. But family first. We know where people prioritize family, and family sometimes is not your blood relative. Sometimes, because in the United States we move away from our families more so than in Sardinia, Italy. So they can be people you adopt as family, and but the key is that you prioritize these people in your life that support you. And we know multi-generational, it's so important to have grandparents with grandkids, in their lives to support their well-being, as well as the middle generation who gets a little break when the other two are supporting each other. Grandparents are engaged somehow in their lives.
I was going to say that I lived in Tennessee for a while, and I helped Del Webb, which is an age-restricted community. They opened up a community in Mountain Tennessee, Lake Providence. And because it was, 55 plus, the local community said, well, they're going to be a responsibility to us. And I said, no, they're not. They're going to be an asset and a contribution. So the first thing I did was, across the street from the property, before even one house went up, I went over to see the principal of the elementary school. And I said, these people are coming from all over the country. Their grandchildren are all other states or everywhere else but here. And I'm sure that your kids, their grandparents are other places too. So what if I get some of my people to come in and volunteer to read to the kids, to play Santa, to be the Easter Bunny, to help out in the cafeteria? And she took me up on it. And so my residents started going over to contribute and be part of the school. And it gave them a purpose, and it really it fed the kids and it fed the adults as well. It was beautiful, and they still do it today. So I'm really happy about that.
That was so smart. And that's exactly, that's a Blue Zone type activity. When we talk about best practices, that's it spot on for how important it is to engage those two generations together or multiple generations. I love that. And so that really, you mentioned purpose. Purpose is one of the things that people who live longer, healthier in the world live on purpose. And we know that you can live up to 7 years longer if you're living on purpose versus living kind of rudderless. And there's times in our lives where we do fall off purpose. Sometimes it's when we move. Sometimes it's when people retire or they lose someone, they lose a spouse or divorce even. But the pandemic is a big triggering event where people lost purpose. I think in Southwest Florida, excuse me, of all the people who were volunteering at the hospital or at all the nonprofits, and suddenly one day they were not allowed to volunteer, for their safety and for others. And so how do you help people find purpose? And we have purpose workshops that helps them, redefine their purpose or re-engage in something else that they might enjoy doing. Downshift, finding ways to de-stress is so critical for our well-being, just giving that body the break, and something you're very involved with. When it comes to food, we don't tell people how to eat, but we say 80% rule. And that's harahachibu in Okinawan, meaning I have an intention not to overstuff myself. And you push away at 80%. You can always go back for more later, but most people find that, oh gosh, that was enough. I just didn't realize it because I was on automatic pilot. Plant slant is the other thing that we mentioned for nutrition is, look at your plate and are we getting more plants in our diet? More fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, lentils. These are all important. An American diet tends to have fish or beef sitting front and center with a few of the others. And so just trying to get more because we know of the lessons learned that most people living longer, healthier lives eat more plants in their diet. And so I think that we mentioned all of them. Family first, belong.
Yeah, that's all of them. And I've done obviously the on purpose workshop. I so enjoyed it, and I think it's as an activity. I would strongly encourage anybody to do that workshop, especially if you are retiring and you lose your identification with being that executive or being that teacher or being that paramedic. You lose touch with who you are, and you feel like you've lost your purpose many times when you do step out of that role, and you just end up rudderless. And I know that the fatality goes up when you lose your
Yes.
rudder. So
The year you retire, they say, is the second most dangerous year of your life. The first year of life is the most dangerous as far as risk to longevity because of what can happen to tiny babies, but the second most risky year is the year we retire. So you're right, finding purpose at that stage is so important. And we've got wonderful stories of people who have unburied an old purpose or found something in the community where they could give their purpose to. And really Blue Zones Project, our mission, helping people live longer, healthier, happier lives, attracts a lot of volunteers to our committees and or to engage their organization. They maybe want to be the champion for their HOA or for their faith-based organization. And it's a really purposeful, wonderful thing to do. Or maybe they're in a community like Del Webb and they say, not only do we want our community to come on board, but we want to do things with the school, like you mentioned, or we want to volunteer at a food bank right now. Amazing things happen. Offering virtually now, purpose workshops virtually. People can go to our Eventbrite page. Yes, and you're going to be on there. I'm so excited because we want to make sure people, while they're still staying safe, have a way to practice all the Power 9. And so when you go to our event page for Power 9 activities, it'll have ways to downshift. And that's one of the things you'll be sharing. And there'll be ways to move naturally, ways to practice plant slant. There's cooking demos and cooking classes on there. So there's something for everyone, but the purpose workshops are on there. And if people want to learn even more about Blue Zones Project, we have our Live Longer Better presentation also virtually now.
Yep, it's awesome. Again, that pivoting that you've done has made it available and safe for everybody to be involved with. And really, if you want to repeat it and do it, once a month, you can do that too. It doesn't matter because you don't restrict attendance when you have it virtual, which is good.
That's right. And what I love, other than the purpose workshop, which is more, it's an engaging activity, everything else you can really watch on your own time too. If overstretched parents working 2 jobs and helping their kids online with school, if the only time they have to downshift is at midnight, well, they can go on and they can view the videos.
Well, they shouldn't be on at midnight. That's really bad.
You're right. We'll say 10:30. Good point.
You're encouraging a bad habit. No.
You're right.
Thank you for joining me today with the Escape Hatch. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to make sure that everybody knows about, that they can follow up with the website, books? I mean, just feel free to mention it now.
Yeah, I just think really there's an opportunity in Blue Zones Project for everybody to not only impact their own well-being, to live a longer, healthier, happier life, but to make it purposeful and help other people as well. And so if people are interested in doing that, they can just reach out to us. You can Google Blue Zones Project Southwest Florida and get our website, but our online activities and the real age assessment, that I recommend everybody take that at least once. If they need more information on that, we can share that with you to share. So it makes it easy for people to get to it. But yeah, there's an opportunity for everyone, and it's for generations to come, not just for ourselves, but it's long term.
Well, we're here to be the example, and as Gandhi said, be the change. This is living change as we day by day, moment to moment, and we can choose how we move. We can choose who we, bond with. All of that's up to us. It is that power is in our own hands. We don't have to believe that we're being told to do something by somebody else. We can actually do that, make those choices ourselves. And they're really educated and smart choices to choose well-being and to elevate well-being above everything else.
That's so true. Great way to wind down the topic. Thank you so much, Yvette.
Thank you, Deb. I so much appreciate your time, and I'm so excited and very humbled to be having the opportunity to be part of the Blue Zones.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a beautiful day.